This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Happy holidays to you and yours, and I'm sure that you guys have enjoyed all of the awesomely played games during Christmas Day. And while festivities are still among us as we're getting ready to head into the new year, basically, I think a lot can be said about, just how great it is to see that the NBA in its totality, as far as teams go, the number of teams that are involved and are competitive and are thriving, and they all believe that they have a shot. And I think that is awesome. I mean, we're literally more than 80% of the NBA right now is all in the thick of an NBA playoff chase. That's great for the NBA. It's great for the fans. It's great for the NBA community. And it gives us an opportunity for us to kind of give flowers to those young and upcoming superstars who have an opportunity to stake a claim and make a name for themselves in their NBA career and future. So with that being said, man, while it's great to talk about the future, it's also good to highlight a little bit about the past. And who none better to do that than my road dog, my partner, my man, 50 grand. We've been doing this thing for so long. Always great to be able to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to the NBA and all those great things. My man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's good, Mr. Shaw? Happy holidays to you and the family, my friend. I am sure you are living it up quite nicely in what was considered a very oddly cold Christmas in Florida.
It was oddly cold, and I know you got to enjoy some of that. If you are just a couple hours north of me as we record this show, not in your usual location, but as always, it is a great holiday season. It's always amazing to be talking NBA basketball with you, my dude. So I've had an amazing time with my friends and family. Hope you have as well. And as always, we hope our friends and listeners have had a great time over the holidays and enjoying this great NBA basketball.
Oh, well, listen, I bring the cold with me everywhere I go.
Thank you, sir.
It's Jersey everywhere I go, bro. So there's nothing to quash on that aspect of things. Before we obviously get into the meat and potatoes of our show, which I think is going to be a great show because we're going to be focusing in on the best of 2022, basically the things that kind of stick out at us within regards to this year and what we're probably looking forward to. As always, we always have this time or this opportunity, usually prior to our the last show before the new year kicks in, or at least the last show before the new year kicks in, for us to kind of do our resolutions and kind of see what kind of reset buttons can be had, or what it is that we would love to be able to see for this upcoming season and moving forward. But I got to ask you, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking the same question. What were your thoughts about the Christmas Day games? What were your interpretations? What is it that stood out to you mostly about what you saw through the course of yesterday's, action-packed NBA, experience?
I mean, a couple of things, but I'll highlight maybe two to kind of give you the space and time that you need, because I know you saw a lot as well. And I'm going to basically kind of go, with the first game. Philadelphia continues to be rolling, and Harden and Embiid answer the call. The Knicks are hot, but they were cool. They're starting to cool down here a little bit. But the Sixers, to me, have started to find their groove. And while I kind of jumped off their ship to begin the year and still feel like something was a little bit off and funky, they've righted things, obviously, like as Brooklyn has too. We talked about them last week. But I really like how Philly looked, in New York. They were down, multiple times in that game and just really kind of took over the second half of that game to win relatively comfortably. And then I'd say the Warriors, they wanted kind of that old thing back. The upstart Grizzlies continue to be exactly that, upstart, and a little too young, a little too inexperienced, and a little too brash, I think, at times. And they got here, and got that whoop that trick situation going for them up in the Bay. The Warriors, after being just embarrassed in the final two games of their East Coast trip, found a way to kind of get it together, and jaw back, with the upstart Grizzlies, and really gave them the business there too. So those are two things that I thought were really interesting. More impressively, I think, is to continue to play at Philadelphia.
So I agree with you when it comes to what I saw between the Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers. I think that game was just a reflection of, a team that knows itself well enough when they can flip that switch and clamp down defensively, stop the other team's better players, when required, and expose the other team who, are still trying to find themselves. But I give credit to the New York Knicks. Typically when it comes to these, when it comes to the Christmas Day games, unless they have a true superstar player that's going to carry the load or is going to kind of carry the spotlight, they don't play well collectively as a team. I think, all of the things that we talk about most often about what hurts the New York Knicks, you can honestly say that this particular game highlights how marketably improved this team is. And I think we kind of expected it. You just, it's kind of hard to ignore the streak that they were on and that they just suddenly will fall off the side because of this, because they play like, the Philadelphia 76ers. But I liked what I saw from the New York Knicks. They're still, they've got a ways to go. If they expect to make people believe that they are going to be a dangerous out or make any kind of significant run for the playoffs, they have to be the team that goes out and finishes games. And they've been notorious of allowing certain games to kind of, uh, you know, let teams sneak past them during the latter half of third quarters and, coming down the stretch of fourth quarter games, and that could be a stain more so on Thibodeau. But I just think right now, if Thibodeau finds a way that he can get a groove going with Brunson, Randall, and RJ Barrett, who's been struggling outside of this year, but we've seen him kind of pick things up a little bit. If these three guys are clicking on all cylinders on the offensive side of the ball, I think that they will be good. I think they'll be viable and to be competitive. And if they get the rest of the role players to step up and step in and really make their mark, this could be a really good team to watch in the second half of the season. To your point about the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies, man, look, all I can tell you is if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, this was your opportunity to really make a statement that you're ready to take over that Western Conference. And the fact that that the Warriors didn't have their best player on the floor, the fact that you have Klay Thompson who's still keeping receipts, you have a very loudmouth Draymond Green who still thinks that they own the Memphis Grizzlies. I feel like the Grizzlies still have a ways to go. Now, maybe they can have their last laugh. Maybe when it matters most in the playoffs, it may mean something. But that record is not going to mean anything. All of the bravado that Morant and Brooks and those young kids bring with their swag really absolutely means nothing. And I found it very interesting, Charlotte, when I look at the social media outlets, specifically on Instagram. Everybody, is ready to get on top of Klay Thompson because of what he did against Dylan Brooks in that game and his post-game comments. But as far as I'm concerned, most of those people probably have no teeth in the game, don't watch the game, don't understand the game, and either just hate the Golden State Warriors or really can't appreciate when a team who is part of a dynasty or a player who is a part of a dynasty, who is a significant piece of the dynasty, believes in his heart of hearts that no other team can beat them when they know that they're in their bag. I think you probably should take heed to that. And I think people nowadays really need to hear and listen to when players speak what they feel and what they say, rather than buying into just what the media clips give you and what just any other comments that are being posted out there. The Warriors are a perfect example of a team that you can easily just overlook them because you never bought into the style of how they played this game of basketball. But if it's proven that they win championships, it cannot be ignored and it cannot be denied. So that was what stood out to me. I think the most important game that really stood out to me, more importantly, was that Nuggets Suns games, because I think it kind of brings into context a lot about what we're saying with teams that have that small window of opportunity to win, and whether or not you're going to buy into a team like the Phoenix Suns, who, if fully healthy, we want to believe that they're as good as anybody. And then the Denver Nuggets, who we keep hoping and praying that it all comes together and it's finally their time. So much good. And then even in between that, Lakers not being able to make it count against the Dallas Mavericks. It was just a plethora of games. The Celtics and the Bucks, which, people can make the argument this could be a preview for the Eastern Conference Finals, and they played like it. So this was a really great slate of games. Kudos to the NBA. They got this right. They were in competition with some of the other NFL games that took place, for their week as well too. But I just think that from the day all the way through the nighttime, could not be ignored. All of the great games that were being played and the competitiveness. And it's something that I think we're going to highlight to a little bit later on in our show in regards to what really stands out about 2022 and what I'm hoping to look forward to for 2023 in the way that the competitive field is laying themselves out, and that's how we're spotlighting how these teams are being composed and comprised of for us to give us a really, really great looking playoff picture for this upcoming season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the NBA did a really amazing job. I'll double down on that. I think we're always a little skeptical going into it, understanding, okay, who's being featured on Christmas Day. But the games lived up to it. I know the Laker game got a little bit out of hand, but they were in it, I think for the majority part of the game. And then Dallas started making a bunch of threes, and Luka, was able to show his greatness. Tim Hardaway Jr., et cetera, Christian Wood, they all played well. So I was excited to see what we did see there, and hopefully the next big day for the NBA will live up, to that. And I think that'll be MLK, and that's where basically everybody in the world plays anyway. But a lot of great matchups, that day as well too. So NBA did an amazing job, held their own against the NFL. Still, as you alluded to, still had, I think it was 3 games, for their Sunday. And again, we'll see what happens next year, and who will get to be featured on NBA Christmas.
Absolutely. All right. So coming up, Shaw and I are going to kind of take a little look back on 2022. Things that probably stuck out to us with regards to this year, and then we'll do our New Year's resolutions, what we want on our wish list. I know we don't typically ask Santa, what I'm saying, what it is that we want to see from the NBA, because whenever we ask this, it's always a little bit past December the 25th, but nonetheless, what I'm saying, we still buy into the idea that somebody is checking our list and making sure that we're either on the naughty or the nice list. I'm more Mr. Naughty because what I'm saying, I want I want the griminess of the NBA being, played out as well too. But and I know Shaw, Mr. Nice, man, he wants the nuance of the game to be elevated to a high level. So we'll see which part of whose list is viable for this upcoming season. As always, be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Game Face Lead, the show's Twitter handle NBA Baseline, so you know where to find us. Just put the baseline in on your search engine. When we come up, just add us on, and you could listen to not just this episode, but all of our previous episodes. If you just want to hear us directly, just go to www.thebaselinenba.com, and that'll give you access to all of our previous shows. Keep in mind too, the Baseline runs with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group be running these content streets. So if you want to check out our show and the plethora of great shows that are out there that covers the gamut of whatever it is that your listening pleasure desires, whether it be music, sports, entertainment, culture, you name it, 19 Media Group has got it. So go to www.19mediagroup.com and check us and this great family of great creators, content creators, and shows that are available for your listening pleasure. All right, coming up, Shaw and I will start getting into a little bit of what we liked and loved in 2022. And a little bit later on, we'll talk about what we want on our wish list, our New Year's resolution. So you don't want to miss on that here on The Baseline. Time to break it down to the bone gristle. Time now for the breakdown. Lee Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast, and our segment of the breakdown. First on the docket will be looking back on 2022. Very interesting season, nonetheless. Obviously, if we made our predictions about who we thought was going to hoist up the NBA trophy, I know I was completely wrong. Shaw, were you completely right?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Since we were nowhere near our predictions, and that's great. It basically means that somebody upended the status quo. So kudos to the Golden State Warriors. But I know that there were certain things about where you were coming from, Shaw, that really stuck out as far as what you felt, what you saw, what mattered most to you, that kind of resonates in your mind about what the 2022 meant to you. So I'll let you go ahead and start it off, and I'll follow suit.
So I've got 3, and maybe I guess we'll do our typical back and forth kind of situation. 2 of mine are somewhat obvious. One is going to be really kind of random, like what the hell is this guy talking about? But I'll start with the Boston Celtics. The way they finished 2021 was pretty tragic. I shouldn't say the way they finished, because technically they won on New Year's Eve in 2021, dismantling the Phoenix Suns. And that's where Jaylen Brown, more or less, the whole famous energies about the shift situation kind of took place. What the Celtics did, from January into the playoffs and eventually the NBA Finals was nothing short of miraculous in a lot of ways. They looked like a dead team walking that would struggle to make the playoffs, and then if they got in, would be probably a first round out because of the lack of consistency. Um, Udoka had what Udoka was able to really kind of get them to buy into defensive principles, creating the league's a historic level defense for them. And then ultimately, again, just kind of finding ways to get through a rough and rugged Eastern Conference, dispatching of the Brooklyn Nets in a sweep, then ultimately moving forward and getting past the Milwaukee Bucks, and then Game 7 against the Miami Heat. It just really, really, really rough stretch. And then they got their butts kind of kicked, but really had a chance to win the NBA Finals. And by a lot of people's accounts, probably should have won had they been a little bit more mature and able to take care of the basketball. You follow that with a great offseason, and then right before the regular season starts for the 22-23 season, more just disarray and the Udoka situation and what he had going off the court. Joe Mazzulla comes in, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, the Boston Celtics have had one hell of a year. Really and truly filled with a tumultuous roller coaster of ups and downs that they have seemed to somehow find a way to overcome to still be one of the league's best teams. And again, considering where they finished 2021 to where they are now going into 2023, it really is night and day, and they're definitely one of the NBA's elite, not just the Eastern Conference, but one of the NBA's elite. And I just didn't necessarily see it coming in this manner. And obviously, there'll be more to talk about with some nuanced players on this team further on in the show.
Yeah, I really like your selection of the Boston Celtics making this impressive run, because really, when you think about it, it is about as impressive as you could possibly imagine. And typically, when we look at teams over the last few years, it's been a steady level of consistency where we can, properly gauge on, whether or not the team is equipped and ready to make a run to get to the playoffs. And I think the Celtics and the Warriors, so I can actually throw my stake in about the Warriors keeping receipts. The Warriors and the Celtics are a clear reminder that there's a reason why there is a regular season and why there is a playoffs. The Warriors were the exact opposite. They came out hot out the gate. And then when Klay Thompson finally came into the fold, what mattered most to the Warriors is their core players whole and are in rhythm and at the right time for them to be able to compete. And you saw through the course of the regular season, the Warriors going through its ebbs and flows, trying to refine itself. And while so much dependency was leaning on Steph Curry because he was playing at an MVP level, even Steph Curry basically decided to sacrifice that MVP run that he basically has been on in the last year and a half, close to 2 years, arguably, or 3 years. I mean, you can make the argument with this team in order to make sure that his co-splash brother, you know what I'm saying, is fully right for the ultimate goal, which is to win an NBA championship. All of the, chastising that's taking place with Draymond Green and, his reluctance to shoot. There was a method to his madness. And we see all of these components, all of these things finally, like, it comes to fruition, the influence he has on the role players and things of that nature. And so when it was all said and done, the Warriors basically coming out of their bag. And listen, we've seen the Warriors show a level of brashness. There's no question. You have to have a level of swag to be able to make the kind of run that is required for them to win the kind of championships that they've had. But there was something different about how they were keeping these receipts and why they were keeping the receipts. And I think you alluded to it during, numerous shows that we've had. To me, it's on a king level of pettiness. I think is, you've kind of alluded to, like, what I'm saying, they just needed a scepter, what I'm saying, and a throne for them to sit on with the level of petty that they were basically airing out after they hoisted that trophy. But like you had said as well, too, they have every right to feel that way and speak on it because they saw it through and they were the last team standing. So again, I don't know if it's another mechanism for people to not love the Warriors because everyone was so used to loving them in the early stages of their dynasty. But whatever they're using as their motivation for them to reinsert themselves in the conversation of being a legit threat to win an NBA title, there's two conversations that are being had when we talk about the Warriors. One, the dynastic Warriors with their core players with Curry, Thompson, and Green, and the Golden State Warriors in the current state of where the NBA is, with this plethora of superstars that are out there, plethora of, other viable MVP candidates, that they are as dangerous as any of those other players that have their teams, whether they're loaded or on the precipice of being loaded. They're as dangerous as any and all of those. And they're not like, washed, what I'm saying? Like, they're not washed up and, to throw away. I don't think anybody wants to face a Warriors team that has a new level of motivation to them in what they're trying to accomplish for this upcoming season and for beyond.
Yeah, 100% agree there. This is a team that you're going to have to, kill them dying. I mean, as they're gripping on to their last shreds of respect and legacy. And they will not be an easy out if they're even able to be out at all. I think just Golden State has just so much championship grit and metal about them, from Kerr all the way down, to the last one on this roster. So whoever gets that task, God bless, man.
I want to throw something out here, Shaw, to talk about how crazy we look at this legacy of the Golden State Warriors. This is the same team in which, from a dynastic perspective, we're subject to allowing the Cleveland Cavaliers to pull off one of the greatest upsets in NBA history, right? For allowing the Cavaliers to come back after they were down 3-1 to win that Game 7 on the road against, arguably one of the best teams, that in the regular season that you could ever imagine, couldn't get the job done, right? And so then we question whether or not they have the heart, the fire, the dog in them, to really win multiple championships. Turn around now and you look at this team who's just finished winning a championship. They literally have one of the worst records, and probably you can make the argument that they have arguably the worst record in NBA history after winning an NBA championship on the road. They turn around, Shaw, and let's just say that they continue this trend where they're just awesome at home but can't win a lick on the road, and then they go into the playoffs and then they actually execute and wind up winning that nonsense again. What are we talking about with this Warriors team? Like, this would be some crazy stuff. And like, they're the one storyline that, even though we can look back on the craziness of what they did in 2022, they are still writing this story going into 2023.
Yeah, agreed on 1,000%. Yeah, this is a team that nobody wants to see, even though they're not playing well on the road right now, as you alluded to. Nobody is like, oh yeah, they're out of here. They got no chance. We can see that, yeah, they're starting to fade slightly as Father Time starts to catch up, but nobody thinks that they're done and knows that they will not be an easy out. Again, I said if they get out at all. So yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I was just going to kind of ride into my second, moment of 2022, looking back, and it would be, honestly, and you talked a little bit about this, I think, in the outset when we're talking about Christmas Day games, but it is the highlighting, if you will, of continued elite level talent that the league has, and John Morant's true taking the bull by the horns, immersion on the scene, last year, just spectacular play after spectacular play. That block against the Lakers that happened in January, and then all the dunks, all the dunks that he had, from miraculous, takeoff points and just sheer athleticism. The league is in immense hands, and I think obviously Luka and others like that too, even Zion now coming on and finally healthy. But what he did, I think, over the course of 2022, and ultimately, unfortunately, getting hurt, to really kind of solidify the fate against their Golden State Warriors. But to me, I think Ja is just really, really on the uptick here, and one of the league's best players that we're going to be continue to see, throughout the years to come here. And I'm really excited about what he was able to do last year and what he's been able to do already now going into 2023.
So as you were, kind of highlighting some, I was thinking in my head, I got to type down. We could have like a million things to look back on 2022. I think the one thing that I'm going to kind of move up the food chain on this conversation is the trade that the Cleveland Cavaliers made in bringing Donovan Mitchell over from the Utah Jazz. And so the reason why I say that is because I think that's a good follow-up to your point with regards to John Morant. It wasn't too long ago that we were saying Donovan Mitchell was going to be a part of this vast future of greatness to come in the NBA. And I think while John Morant is etching his level of legacy through the Memphis Grizzlies, and we'll see, how that continually plays out, what Donovan Mitchell can help bring to this Cleveland Cavaliers team can speak to a whole other narrative post the LeBron James era. And I feel like in order for that to happen, it's going to be a collective effort of what JB Bickerstaff has been doing over the last couple of years, what Kobe Altman has been doing as far as putting together the pieces, which was something that clearly they have failed to be able to do, since having LeBron James, right? Like, it's always a hit or miss thing with them. So the fact that the Cavs kind of came in underneath the radar, so to speak, and stole Donovan Mitchell or took Donovan Mitchell away from what we thought was supposed to be a surefire, head straight, till you get to the cross Bron, till you get down to 95. Somehow you get to 95 and find yourself, right there, in New York City, over there by Madison Square Garden, playing for the New York Knicks. How he winds up with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you can clearly see the impact that he does have on that team. We're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, being a viable team that's going to compete, for the next few years, and even this upcoming season, as making a run to try to get out of the Eastern Conference and be a representative for the NBA Finals. And so you can see certain teams, they're not waiting to shoot their shot. Some of them are going all in. The ridiculousness of what the Minnesota Timberwolves did to get Rudy Gobert, because, they basically said that they're going all in. And I applaud that, because typically a lot of small market teams will pull their punches, but you're not seeing it from the Cavs. You didn't see that from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I applaud them for doing that, because this is what helps to open things up and allow the NBA to focus more when they do these CBA deals, when they sit down and they speak with these owners. There needs to be a collective embodiment of saying, how do we continue to make this a competitive field where we narrow the gap and we have everybody all competing at once? There'll be a few teams that fall by the wayside, that are going to always wind up hanging around trying to find their unicorn, lottery pick. But at the end of the day, you need to have at least 85+% of the teams that you have in this league all in the runnings to try and get to make a play to get at the champ, or get the playoffs, to give themselves a chance to get at the championship.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably look at that move specifically as a potentially franchise-changing move for the Cavaliers. While we don't know if it'll necessarily lead to championships or even a championship, we do know that they are right there in the thick of it. And alongside Evan Mobley and Darius Garland and Jared Allen, this is a squad that's going to be, one to be rectified with, for quite some time. So great pick. So taking alongside, the trade realm. So here's my kind of out of the wilderness, pick for a 2022 moment. And I'll take you back to February 2022 and the trade deadline. And finally, the Indiana Pacers decide they're going to move, Domas Sabonis. Okay. The Sacramento Kings are the team that is the recipient of the All-Stars, talents. But in return, Indiana gets back Tyrese Halliburton, not De'Aaron Fox, but Tyrese Halliburton on his rookie scale contract. A masterful stroke for the Indiana Pacers. And as we've kind of now gone into what is now the 2022-2023 season, both teams are living it up. Sacramento is literally in the thick of the playoff push for the first time in however long, 20 years or whatever it is. And the Pacers, who were thought to be tanking, are more than above ground and are also in the playoff hunt in the Eastern Conference. And Tyrese Halliburton is having the year he said he was going to have, averaging 20 and 10 and bidding for an all-star, if you will, but more importantly, keeping the Pacers in the playoff hunt, as I alluded to. It was an underrated situation that I think both teams got exactly what they wanted and needed, and it really is paying some great dividends. And while it may not have the same impact as a Donovan Mitchell to Cleveland, as we're seeing, immediately, I think for Indiana, they're really, really excited about having Halliburton as the future face of this franchise. He's even been able to settle the Miles Turner noise and all that minutia that was around here. Turner may actually want to stay in Indiana now, I think, at this point, because Sabonis is gone. And Halliburton is a great, great teammate and guy who's feeding him, and Turner's having one of his best years as a result of Halliburton being the point guard. And again, conversely, in Sacramento, Sabonis, while actually as we record, we're awaiting some news that he actually may be injured and might be out for a while after hurting his hand in the last game. Still, he's been a great compliment to De'Aaron Fox as well, too, in Sacramento, along with the addition of Mike Brown. So let's not, discredit that. That's a huge part to what they've been able to do this current season. But Sabonis has really been everything that they've hoped and wanted for. And I'm, again, really didn't expect this trade as kind of just like, oh, okay, yeah, kind of like whatever as it was for many people. It really has done a great job for both teams that were looking for a certain level of success and are now both are actually realizing that same success.
Yeah, this is an excellent observation, by yourself, Shaw, because again, and it highlights a little bit what I was mentioning before about how small market teams are not doing what's conventionally considered the norm for them, in just kind of holding their cards tight, waiting until the trade deadline, maybe waiting it out longer than necessary. Do the necessary work so that you have a better vision about what it is that you have left to do and what it is that you're looking to do, moving forward. And I think both of these players are clearly not just happy where they are, to your point, but they're having an impact on those teams. And whether that team is a re-up project, or it's a team that just needs a different vibe, a different feel, a different way of looking at what that work ethic looks like, to being, a quality brand, a quality NBA team. Sometimes you got to do that, and sometimes it just takes one player, or it takes one move, or it takes one trade. I love that one, Shaw. So one that
Thanks.
really stands out to me more than anything, and I'm going to highlight this because I think it's going to kind of speak a little bit more about what we should be talking about, come next year, and maybe it might have more to do with my wish list, so to speak. But my thing is, billionaire money don't make no champs. Okay, I think we've seen way too much now with guys with very quote unquote uh, billionaire brandished owners throwing money around, and even in a cap, or a very regulated NBA, money being thrown around, players really commanding high market value, but not yielding the results for the money that they've received. You're really starting to see teams going back to making smart, calculated moves and making it more about the makeup of the team that is required for you to make these championship runs. And I hearken this back to what the Milwaukee Bucks had to do to facilitate a team that Giannis can work with and run with for them to go and get themselves that NBA championship. And we can make all of the excuses in the world. We can say, oh, the Bucks were a big toe away from not making it to the Eastern Conference Finals or getting into an NBA championship. But I just want to remind people, right, that when it comes down to what it's going to take in order to win an NBA championship and the teams that are comprised of winning that championship, it's not finding the latest and greatest player, right? It's finding the right player that matches what your star player has already established in the culture. And it's about the rest of those guys buying into it. And more importantly, the guy who's coming over is fully committed to helping to elevate what that culture has already established, right? And so we're kind of seeing that trend. We're seeing how the Warriors went back into its bag and developed the role players who had a very important played a very important part in getting them to a place where they could see themselves crossing that finish line and hoisting that championship, getting back to playing that good defense that they didn't really have through most of the season, but it all came together. They had a great defensive player, but as far as collectively playing defense, it didn't really turn itself around until all of the guys fully came healthy and they got back into that, that mode. And we're seeing that, with the teams that are right now in the thick of this conversation, the Denver Nuggets, and, all of it comes down to the necessary moves being made in order to put together the right team that's going to stay competitive throughout the course of the season. And I applaud that, because it's so easy to think a guy comes in, got a ton of money, gives the players what they want, but isn't giving them what they need. And players sometimes don't even understand that themselves, because, hey, they have to be concerned about making sure that they're getting their lettuce, so to speak. So I just find it interesting how this year has kind of been more of an indictment on how teams have to be more accountable about who they have in the front office, the moves that are being made, and what they're doing in order to facilitate the quality teams that are necessary to compete, not just the regular season, but also when they have to make that run in the playoffs.
Yeah, roster construction is extremely important, and you can't just buy championships. That has now been proven here over the last couple of seasons. So I really think ever since the Warriors, so to speak, with Kevin Durant, every other team they've made splashy moves, to get them over the proverbial hump. But it was really about the overall roster construction, the auxiliary parts that ultimately lead you to a certain level of team chemistry. And we're seeing now that you just can't throw talent together and think, okay, it's going to be amazing, and that automatically guarantees NBA championships. So Brooklyn is going through that right now currently, although they are playing great basketball. But a lot of iterations of changes have happened there, and they haven't won a championship as of yet. So you need to have the requisite leadership, and that is really in the front office, but then also on the court as well too. So I think that's an excellent point. Where again the money doesn't necessarily make a team or make a roster NBA viable.
Absolutely. The last thing I think I just want to highlight in 2022 that I think requires, at least for us, because we have a podcast and we also support podcasts and other mediums that are out there that covers sports and covers the things that we enjoy listening and watching and things of that nature, is I want to applaud the NBA players, the NBA community. While sometimes, they don't get certain things right, like the situation that happened with Robert Sarver, and obviously that's still ongoing. One thing that they did get right, and I'll put this on the players as well too, that felt it was important for them to speak on those things, is when the time came for them to speak on a call of action to elicit more activism in not just the NBA culture, but just in the communities that the culture supports and that supports the NBA culture. They spoke on it. The return of Brittney Griner, civil action, and also, racial equity, things of that nature. The guys, Jaylen Brown, Karl Anthony Towns, public health safety, things of that nature. I want to applaud that this year was a great year for us finally seeing young, thriving athletes who are just not making money, and we're just not also following them on the gram for who they're dating and, what they're wearing, but also for what they're saying. LeBron James, as always, the things that they're saying and the things that they're doing is resonating with our younger generation to have a more vocal part. And if they have a platform that is thriving and people are following, that they can also speak to these things as well too. And it was just great to see that the NBA has stepped up and done that immensely. It wasn't something that was forced. It wasn't something that was, being coddled just by Adam Silver. Probably more so, it pushed Adam Silver to help use the NBA to speak more with more resonance about some of these things, especially, again, the situation that happened with Brittney Griner, who thankfully is back home here in the United States under those horrific situations and horrific conditions. I applaud the NBA community to supporting not just the WNBA and also the WNBA community doing what they did as well too, but all of the NBA, all the basketball culture in itself, all speaking up, saying what was happening was an injustice and figuring out a way to make sure that she was prioritized to be brought back home.
Yeah, I mean, I would only have, I guess, maybe one amendment, and it really was the W more than anything else that led that
Right. No,
charge.
no, absolutely. Absolutely. And and my apologies if what I'm saying is that when I say the NBA, I just meant the guys. I didn't want it to be in that context. I'm just saying the basketball community. I probably should have said it in that context, and spearheaded by the WNBA as well too. But the fact that it was great to see as well, high profile players all coming
Sure.
out and speaking and doing it even on prime time, networks that they were a part of. I thought that was important as well too, like the ESPYs and award shows and other things that these guys were and girls were involved in. Even the FIFA World Cup. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that. They use that platform to really speak to those things without creating a ruckus, but also just making sure it was being heard and it's still at the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah. Well said though. So yeah, and hopefully we won't have too many more of these issues to have to handle and deal with, moving forward. But I think again, kudos, to this charge led by the W, and their commissioner, and then obviously buoyed by, the NBA, and as you alluded to, the basketball community that was really kind of able to get Biden to do what he needed to do for Brittney specifically. So yeah, man, but that's a whole nother political conversation. So,
Absolutely.
that's a whole other show, or maybe a whole nother podcast altogether.
Probably. I don't know. Something maybe to talk about for 2024. You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we're going to get into our New Year's resolutions, and I know Shaw has got a couple of them. You know what I'm saying? He misses New York and those other places below the city and stuff like that. So you might hear a resolution or two about a couple of those teams in the general area and stuff. But we'll leave that for him to throw that out there. But you don't want to miss out on our resolutions here on the baseline.
This awesome show that you are listening to is sponsored by Rich Kid Money Bear Clothing. The Bronx-based company represents 1990s streetwear with a modern twist. Rich Kid offers high-end quality clothing at reasonable prices. They have t-shirts, hoodies, sweatsuits, and more for men, women, and kids like me. You can check them out at richkidmoneybear.com and you can use the code 19media for a 15% discount. Okay, back to the show. And as always, this is a 19 Media Group presentation.
We are back, Cali, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast, and as we're rounding off our conversation here with the breakdown, just finished up talking about a look back at 2022. Let's go forward, Shaw, and do our New Year's resolutes. I know that you want to see a little bit more from Philly and some of our MVP candidates and things of that nature. So I'll let you lace into what your New Year's resolutions, your New Year's wishes are.
So, yeah, I think for the New Year's, I think the Philadelphia 76ers need to come to a realization of who they're ultimately going to be. So gave them credit in the beginning, said they're right now is recording on a great, 8 or 9 game winning streak. But oddly, just a very odd report on Christmas Day from Woj about Harden still has eyes on Houston. And I don't know what that's even about. It just really seems like it's coming out of left field. But I think for the Philadelphia 76ers and for what they need to do with who their franchise player really is in Joel Embiid, a decision needs to be made about the future of this. Harden took, a 1-year deal, whatever the case may be. He took less money. I guess he has an opt-in or whatever the case may be for next year. But essentially a 1-year deal to really kind of see how things would go. And I think the Sixers need to get ahead of this to some degree. They've mortgaged some of their future by bringing in James because of the Daryl Morey affinity. But I'd really want them to understand, like, listen, if you feel like he's going to be out of here and you really won't know until, I guess, end of the playoffs, you left yourself wide open. Like, you're naked at James Harden's disposal. Make the right decision. And that's all I'm saying for your franchise and for your organization. Understand where you're going to land. Get as clear answers as you possibly can. And if you need to preempt some things. But if Harden leaves you and you're unable to really kind of fill the cupboard, so to speak, you're going to leave Embiid in the lurch. And I would just caution the 76ers, in that. So my New Year's resolution to them is be definitive in the direction that you're trying to go, be fair to Embiid, and ultimately decide what this team is supposed to look like. What's the level of success that's acceptable for you, but you're kind of still at Harden's whim because he wants a certain level of success to be attained this year for him to stay, I guess, according to Woj. Really weird report. And I hope the Sixers are able to, figure out the future of their franchise as a result of what happens this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. This is what happens in Philly, I guess, not so much brotherly love, right? Like, hopefully one day we'll get to a place where things are exactly how they are. Is it more Harden? Is it Harden's relationship with Embiid? Is Embiid's relationship with Harden having any level of an impact? I just find it so crazy that even while players have their own personal agenda, that we're still talking about this as if to say, James Harden's a rookie or James Harden was back when he was in OKC. You know what I'm saying? Like, at some point his gameplay is going to start, going on a downturn, right? So this is no longer about him.
He's a different player than he was in Houston. I mean, clearly. And I just don't know that despite his talent level that they can be at his whim. Like, I don't like it for them. And I
think that's more so to the point of what, where you're coming from, like at the expense of a disgruntled Joel Embiid, a frustrated Joel Embiid, but I will also say this as well, too, to what you're talking about and to what these reports are really saying. I want to know how vocal Joel Embiid can possibly be about this, because I think to me, that speaks more to him being the quiet giant, right? Like we always said, he's very much like a Hakeem Olajuwon with his skill set, but Hakeem Olajuwon was a fierce competitor. Hakeem Olajuwon, controlled, I guess you could say, the narrative about how he wanted the teams that he played for to be defined. Can we ever say that that's ever been the case with Joel Embiid? You know, Joel Embiid has voiced his opinions about players. He's voiced his opinions about, the ownership, so to speak. But there's never been, a collective, unified, voice coming out of Joel Embiid about, his loyalty to the Philly ownership and stuff like that. I think he believes that the ownership owes him a team that's willing to make a serious run for an NBA title. So, again, I'm not blaming Joel Embiid. I'm just saying that it's crazy, because what is it going to take in order for this not to be the conversation? Because this really shouldn't be a conversation. You would think that a veteran player, right, like James Harden, doesn't have as many years and teeth in the game like, say, Chris Paul does. Chris Paul made that move to go to Phoenix to play with a younger player, and you can see the influence that Chris Paul has on Devin Booker and what that Phoenix Suns team, even though they haven't won a championship, right? But I sometimes wonder when, you have a guy like Joel Embiid, like if he can't get a guy like James Harden to buy in and they all be together on making this run, whether it be 1 year, 2 years, whatever the case may be, my question is going to be like, when is it going to like really, resonate on him that he needs to speak up in a manner, in a fashion that's going to be like, hey, Philly ownership, stop, putzing around, man. Like, I want dogs on my team. Like, I want guys who are going to make that sacrifice. Like, I've made those sacrifices. Because when you look at his body of work, he's been playing through injuries. He's been playing compromise. He's given you MVP run stretches, but he doesn't have enough people when it really comes down to it to tote that finish line when he's incapable of doing it. And, I don't know what else more can be done, but it's crazy that it's come to that point, though. It really has. If they don't win, I sincerely mean that, meaning getting themselves to an Eastern Conference Finals or an NBA championship run, we're going to be talking about having very different conversations altogether, about what this team is going to look like, what the mentality of this team is going to be, who's going to be next to, if Embiid wants to stay, or if Embiid is going to be one of those guys to be like, yo, get me up out of here.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll kind of switch it over to keeping it rather in the Atlantic Division, and a team we've obviously talked about a lot, and that's near and dear to our hearts. But I think now the New Year's resolution is, I think Tatum needs to be going for MVP and not stat hunting and stat chasing. It's about getting his team not to just only the best record in the Eastern Conference or in the NBA, but then having a definitive and demonstrative statement, I think, in the NBA playoffs, and hopefully that will lead to an NBA Finals MVP as well too. I've been hard on Tatum, throughout his career. I've had to soften, I guess, in the last 2 years because of how well he has played. While a lot of people were claiming he was the future sooner than I was ready to give him, that level of accolade, I see it very clearly now. And you need for him to kind of get over some of his turnover demons, even some of the self-doubt that he may have in some big games. He seems to have figured out Milwaukee to some degree, but he's got to get over the next hump, if you will, and that's win an NBA championship. And I think being an MVP on all levels, finals MVP and the regular season MVP, those are, I think, attainable and realistic goals for a person of his ilk and caliber, and I'd love to see that happen for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said everything that needs to be said. I think the only thing that I would probably say when it comes to Tatum, I got to see him want it. To have Kobe Bryant as your mentor, for, obviously prior to his demise, I thought it spoke volumes about his, basketball savvy, who he's leaning on for him to find that fire in his belly, for him to do what the Kobe Bryants of this world were meant to do, which is just take shit over. That's just what it comes down to. And that's what I've been waiting to see from both him and Jaylen Brown. Take shit over, right? Like, sometimes I know you want to lean on the X's and O's, and you lean on your coach giving you insight, but there's just has to be a feel in this game where they know, even the opposing team knows, this is your freaking game. This is your freaking series. Like, nobody is taking that from you. And I think we've been all saying that Tatum has the skills to do it. And if you want to win an MVP, it comes down to doing it when it matters the most, doing it against the teams who a lot of people think that you're not capable of beating, right? And so if the Boston Celtics want to be the number one team in the East, if the Boston Celtics want to go to an NBA Finals, the Boston Celtics want to win in the NBA Finals. That's what it's going to take. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think Tatum needs to go from being good player, physical player, all-star, all-NBA to being flat out feared. Like flat out feared when he's on the court in the same way, that Kobe was, when he was still with us. So if you're going to go out here and make those mantras and, text Kobe and then publicize it and do those types of, for lack of a better phrase, kind of corny or cheesy things, I understand with the sentiment of it, but you're not there yet. And I think he has all the ability to. And so I'm excited to see him actualize and realize his potential, as one of the league's best players. And, the awards will definitely solidify some of that
Well,
stake.
as you alluded to, Shaw, like we just talked about this with the Philadelphia 76ers and Joel Embiid. I mean, how many runs has he had to be a candidate for MVP? And I can make the argument for you that I think part of the times the reason why he doesn't get it, it's not just the injuries. It's, he has these moments where there's this level of passiveness and he just kind of concedes to, too many situations and circumstances that he needs to be the one who goes in there and just snatches the hearts out of people's chests. That's the reason why Jokic is always in this conversation. Like, people can say what they want to say about that dude. The numbers don't lie about him, but more importantly, how he plays the game, the way that he plays the game doesn't lie as well too. And that's what we want to see from these two guys.
Yes, sir. So my final resolution rather, that I want to see is OKC stay the course. And what that means is, listen, don't give up on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That dude is hooping. And if you can get him alongside Chet Holmgren, next season, alongside Josh Giddey, defensive, principles, and even Alexei Pokusevsky and Lou Dort, you have the makings of something. And SGA has his team, not quite at 500 or there, but they've been really competitive. And that really is off the strength of him averaging 30 a game and making a bid for his first All-Star game. So a lot of people are looking for him to be the next disgruntled All-Star who needs to move on. Give it a year, give it 2 years, let him play alongside Chet, because Chet looked really good in the short time that we saw. And I think OKC has the potential to be a problem, and not necessarily right away, but that thing is going to take some time to grow a little bit. But SGA he's so good. So stay the course, don't trade him, and allow that core to build and see if you have something special there.
Yeah, I love that thought. The only New Year's resolution that I have, Shaw, because we can get into specifics all we want, but what I want to see is I want to see game venom, man. All of these teams are ripe for us seeing a gauntlet for the NBA playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets, Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, and all of the teams down the line that are going to try and knock those dudes off. And then you look in the Western Conference with the Warriors and the Grizzlies and the Nuggets. Like, all of them have some teeth in their matchups at some point during the NBA playoffs over the last few years. The Phoenix Suns, right? Like, some of them have taken some heavy L's. Some of them have started, chatting it up. Some of them have already started, jawing at each other. I want that to happen. I want to see it all in the playoffs. Like, I want to see all of these teams, because you want to know what? I no longer want to hear any more of the excuses about if this team didn't have this player or this guy got injured or whatever. And I want to see everybody healthy as well too. But I want to make sure that all of these teams that we're talking about are all in it to win it for this year's playoffs, because I'll tell you right now, whoever comes out of this should not only just be stronger, should also be able to have like all of the bragging rights, because it is not going to be an easy run to get to this NBA Finals, whether you're in the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference. And I'm loving every single minute of it.
Yeah. And I you stayed true to you kind of the 90s theme, if you will. We're just a little bit grimy. There are no friends. We're all just trying to go out here and get it. And I think that is a really fun NBA. I don't know if we'll see it through all 30 teams, if you will, but I think there are a couple of teams that still have some of that. And like I say, we'll be friends off the court, but none of this buddy shit, when we're playing in between these lines. So yeah, man.
Yeah,
the NBA is
no TikTok, man. We don't need to see no post-game TikToking and stuff like that.
Settle down.
Do that for somebody.
Baseline is not in the TikTok generation, so so all of our fans and listeners, you know what it is. You know what it is when you rock with us and you click on the subscribe button or the play button on the Baseline. Ain't no TikToking over here, but at the end of the day, we still love our NBA, and we love our NBA kind of in the old school way, and we do get a little bit of that from time to time.
Absolutely, man. Well, this has been a great show altogether, Shaw. Once again, man, awesome way for us to kind of inch a little bit towards the new year, right? I know
Sure.
we're looking forward to that, but it's been really an awesome couple of weeks right now, and the holidays have been great too. And I can only say it's going to get better when we get to 2023.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. Shouts to 19 Media Group for their continued support, of the brand and what we've been able to do here. Shout to people who've been rocking with us from a sponsorship standpoint. We've had an amazing year, and we're actually heading into year 10 in January of the show itself. So just really, really amazing things that are being accomplished here, I think, within the NBA space, and we're a part of that space. So for our fans and listeners, happy holidays, happy new year. Hope you are going to share some of your own New Year's resolutions with us. I always ask for feedback and how you like the show, and some of the thoughts that we displayed or portrayed here for you on the show, and what are your own thoughts on that as well. So as always, get at us on Twitter at NBA Baseline. You can follow us on Instagram as well too at NBA_Baseline. Those people still got our IG, dog. What is that, right?
I got to tell you, man, Shaw, you're really getting good at this stuff. I'm gonna have to start having you end our shows anymore, man. You know what I'm saying? I'll do the beginnings, but I like how you like to finish things off, man. So,
I learned from watching you. Remember that commercial? I learned from watching you, Dad. I learned from watching you.
Now you calling me pops. I don't understand what just happened here. Once again, man, we really appreciate you guys again for the continued support, the love, all of that, man. We appreciate you guys for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw, you know how we do. You know how we roll, baby. We'll catch up with you next time.